This video has been brought to you by ESPN+. Watch this weekend's fights for free by signing up for your 7-day free trial using the link in the description below. UFC 236 had a whole card filled with top talent from top to bottom, which delivered an entertaining night of fights. The main attraction of the card were the two interim title fights, which would determine the next number one contender for the weight classes. Now with UFC 236 over and done, it is now time to determine where these fighters will go on from their victories and losses. There are certain matchups that make the most sense, which will help fighters progress in the rankings. So for this video, I'll be talking about 10 fights to make after UFC 236, Holloway vs Poirier 2. Dustin Poirier vs Max Holloway. In the main event at UFC 236, Dustin Poirier defeated Max Holloway by a unanimous decision to become the new UFC interim lightweight champion. In the fight, we saw a great power advantage where Dustin Poirier was able to land the bigger and harder shots, which had Max Holloway stunned many times. Max Holloway was able to push forward in the later rounds, but the clean striking of Dustin Poirier was enough for him to win the fight by unanimous decision. The fight that makes the most sense for Dustin Poirier is to face the current reigning UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib Nurmagomedov has kept his undefeated record intact, using his dominant sambo skills to completely overwhelm his opponents. He has overpowered all of his opponents so far, where he just looks unstoppable right now. His last victory was at UFC 229, where he defeated former 2-division world champion Conor McGregor by a neck crank to retain his title. During the UFC 236 post-fight press conference, the UFC president Dana White mentioned that Khabib Nurmagomedov will most likely return in September and will be booked to fight Dustin Poirier in a title unification bout.
Yes, that's the fight. Poirier will fight Khabib next, probably in September.
Both fighters have a long winning streak, and both fighters have a lot of momentum behind them, where this fight will definitely deliver a good show. Another option for Dustin Poirier could be to face the former interim UFC lightweight champion Tony Ferguson if Khabib is not ready in time. Tony Ferguson has just about cleared out the lightweight division using a blend of unorthodox techniques combined with his solid ground game, which has helped him rack up some dominant wins under his belt. He currently holds an 11-fight winning streak and is considered by many fans to be the true number one contender in the lightweight division. He was able to win the interim UFC lightweight title UFC 216, where he submitted Kevin Lee by a triangle choke in the third round. His next bout would be booked against Khabib Nurmagomedov for the vacant UFC lightweight title UFC 223, but a freak accident just a day before the fight would force him out of the bout. He would make his return a year later and face Anthony Pettis in a 3-round lightweight bout at UFC 229. In the fight, both fighters would have their big moments, but inevitably Tony Ferguson would get his hand raised with the second-round TKO corner stoppage. Tony Ferguson has been the number one contender for many years, but hasn't been able to have a crack at the title. Fighting Dustin Poirier for the true number one contender spot would be a great option if Khabib Nurmagomedov is not ready in time. Both fighters always bring it, and this could potentially be the fight of the year candidate. Another option for Dustin Poirier could be to face the former 2-division world champion Conor McGregor if Khabib is not ready in time. Conor McGregor was able to make himself known in the UFC with his flamboyant personality and his ruthlessness inside the octagon. He started his UFC career at featherweight, where after 6 straight wins, he was able to dethrone long-reigning champion Jose Aldo in just 13 seconds of the first round to become the new UFC featherweight champion of the world. He would next go on to have 2 of the most craziest fights in the UFC against Nate Diaz back-to-back, and next made the move to the lightweight division, where he challenged then reigning champion Eddie Alvarez at UFC 205. In the fight, Conor McGregor would overpower Eddie Alvarez with his lightning-fast strikes, finishing him by TKO in the second round, where he would become the first fighter ever to hold 2 titles simultaneously. He would next embark on a new journey, where he would cross over to the boxing world and would face Floyd Mayweather Jr. In the fight, Conor McGregor would start off strong and would slow down over the rounds due to the crisp striking of Floyd Mayweather to eventually get the TKO victory in the 10th round. He would next make his return inside the octagon against champion Khabib Nurmagomedov at UFC 229. In the fight, he would get overwhelmed by Khabib's wrestling and would be eventually submitted by a neck crank in the second round. A rematch between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor could possibly be the best option next if Khabib isn't ready on time. Both fighters previously fought in the featherweight division at UFC 178, where Conor McGregor was able to finish Dustin Poirier by TKO in the first round. A lot has happened since their first fight. Both fighters have grown so much, where the rematch itself would be very interesting to see. Both fighters have history together, where it would definitely deliver a fantastic show. Another option for Dustin Poirier could be to face Nate Diaz in a number one contenders bout if Khabib is not ready in time. Nate Diaz became a superstar after submitting Conor McGregor on 2 weeks notice at UFC 196, shocking the world. Prior to that fight, both Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz developed an intense rivalry where things became very physical and both fighters traded insults at one another. This led to the fight having a lot of buzz, where it ended up breaking UFC 100 pay-per-view sales. Both fighters were set to fight each other at UFC 202 in a rematch, where the rivalry intensified even more to a greater level. When both fighters stepped inside the octagon, Conor McGregor was able to drop Nate Diaz in the earlier rounds, and Nate Diaz was able to come back in the later rounds with his conditioning and his toughness. After the 5 rounds, the majority decision was given to Conor McGregor. After this fight, Nate Diaz would completely disappear from the MMA world. He would later make an appearance at the UFC 25th anniversary press conference, where he would be booked to face Dustin Poirier in a 3-round lightweight bout at UFC 230. All the MMA fans were buzzing to see Nate Diaz in action, where this fight was being looked at as the main attraction of UFC 230. Leading up to the fight, Dustin Poirier would be forced to withdraw from the fight due to an injury, which would result in the fight being cancelled. Both fighters have unfinished business with each other, where this is a great possible option for Dustin Poirier if Khabib isn't ready on time. Both fighters always bring it whenever they fight, where this could easily earn itself the fight of the year. With Max Holloway losing to Dustin Poirier, the fight that makes the most sense for him is to face Frankie Edgar next. Frankie Edgar has been a top name in the division for many years. He has defeated some of the best fighters in the weight class. His size and frame is perfect for the division. He has got the better of his opponents using his relentless cardio and his fierce pressure. He has been scheduled to face Max Holloway on numerous occasions, but the fight never came to fruition. Frankie Edgar was booked to face Max Holloway at UFC 218, but was forced to pull out due to injury. The fight was booked again at UFC 222, but this time Max was forced to pull out due to a leg injury. Brian Ortega stepped in on short notice, where in the fight, he would knock Frankie Edgar out in the first round. Frankie Edgar would make his return against Cub Swanson in a rematch at UFC Final 128, where he would dominate all 3 rounds to win the fight by unanimous decision. With Max Holloway coming off a loss, I believe this is the fight to make, as both fighters have unfinished business with each other, where it is the best option for Max Holloway to make a comeback. Another possible option for Max Holloway is to face rising featherweight contender Alexander Volkanovski if he is victorious against Jose Aldo at UFC 237. Alexander Volkanovski has been a breath of fresh air since joining the promotion, where he has just ran through all of his opponents in a very dominant fashion. He has put together a solid 6-fight winning streak, where he last finished former title challenger Chad Mendes by TKO at UFC 232. He is currently scheduled to face former UFC title holder Jose Aldo at UFC 237, where if he is able to win, he will definitely solidify himself as a true contender in the weight class. This fight seems to make the most sense, where it will be interesting to see who comes out on top. Another possible option for Max Holloway could be to face dynamic striker Zabit Magomedsharipov next. Zabit Magomedsharipov has took the UFC's featherweight division by storm, where in his fights he has used his unpredictable fighting style to pull off some of the most craziest finishes ever. A good example of this is when he finished late replacement Brandon Davis with a knee bar in the second round. His striking involves him using flashy techniques, which has quickly made him into a must-see fighter. In his UFC career, he has been able to put together a 5-fight winning streak, dominating all of his opponents. He last faced Jeremy Stephens at UFC 235, where in the fight, Zabit Magomedsharipov was just one step ahead, where he used his distance to attack Jeremy Stephens from the outside, winning the fight by unanimous decision. Max Holloway vs Zabit Magomedsharipov is another great option, where both fighters could certainly put on a great show for the fans. Israel Adesanya vs Kelvin Gastelum. In the co-main event, Israel Adesanya defeated Kelvin Gastelum by a unanimous decision to become the interim UFC middleweight champion of the world. In the fight, we saw Kelvin Gastelum give a hard time to Israel Adesanya, where he kept marching forward, not giving him any space. In the later rounds, we saw Israel come back from adversity, where he was able to knock Kelvin Gastelum down many times, almost getting the finish. The final push from Israel Adesanya was enough for him to secure himself the interim UFC middleweight title. The fight that makes the most sense for Israel Adesanya is to face the current UFC middleweight champion Robert Whittaker in the title unification bout later this year. Whilst as the champion, it has been very difficult for Robert Whittaker to remain healthy, which has prevented him from competing on many different occasions. His last victory was a split decision win against Yoel Romero at UFC 225. He was next scheduled to face Kelvin Gastelum at UFC 234, but was forced to pull out due to an emergency hernia surgery. This fight makes the most sense, where both of the styles match up very well against each other, and it will definitely be interesting to see who comes out on top. With Kelvin Gastelum losing to Israel Adesanya, the fight that makes the most sense for him is to face Brad Tavares next. Brad Tavares hasn't competed since his unanimous decision loss to Israel Adesanya at the Ultimate Fighter 27 finale. In that fight, Israel Adesanya was able to dominate the fight from start to finish, using his dynamic striking skills. Both fighters are coming off a loss to Israel Adesanya, and it only makes sense for them to fight each other. This is a very interesting matchup in the middleweight division, where it will be interesting to see who comes out on top. Khalil Ranfree Jr. vs Eric Anders. Khalil Ranfree Jr. defeated Eric Anders by a unanimous decision. The fight that makes the most sense for Khalil Ranfree Jr. is to face Mauricio Shogun Rua next. Mauricio Shogun Rua last defeated Tyson Pedro by TKO in the third round at UFC Final 142. Both fighters are primarily strikers, which will definitely make it an entertaining scrap to see. With Eric Anders losing to Khalil Ranfree Jr., the fight that makes the most sense for Eric Anders is to face Misha Sakunov next. Misha Sakunov last faced Johnny Walker at UFC 235, where he lost the fight by TKO in just 38 seconds of the first round. Both fighters are coming off losses, where it will be interesting to see who comes out on top. Dwight Grant vs Alan Jouban. Dwight Grant defeated Alan Jouban by a split decision. The fight that makes the most sense for Dwight Grant is to face Thiago Alves next. Thiago Alves last scraped a split decision victory over Max Griffin at UFC Final 144. Both fighters are coming off wins, where it will definitely be an entertaining striking contest. With Alan Jouban losing to Dwight Grant, the fight that makes the most sense for Alan Jouban is to face Randy Brown next. Randy Brown last lost to Nico Price by knockout at UFC Final 133. Both fighters are coming off losses, where it will be interesting to see who comes out on top. Nikita Krylov vs Ovin St. Preux. And Nikita Krylov defeated Ovin St. Preux by a rear naked choke in the second round. The fight that makes the most sense for Nikita Krylov is to face Jimmy Crute next. Jimmy Crute last defeated Sam Alvey by TKO in the first round at UFC 234. Both fighters have a number of finishes under their belt, where they will definitely put on a show for the fans. With Ovin St. Preux losing to Nikita Krylov, the fight that makes the most sense for him is to face Sam Alvey next. Sam Alvey last lost to Jimmy Crute by TKO in the first round at UFC 234. Both fighters are known for their knockout power, where it will definitely be an entertaining scrap to see. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please make sure you hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, please hit that subscribe button. So that was my list of the 10 fights to make after UFC 236, Holloway vs Poirier 2. Let me know your honorable mentions in the comment section below. Also check out my last video where I talk about the 5 UFC champions who could hold 2 belts in 2019, and my other video where I talk about the 10 most improved fighters of 2018. Also, if you guys want to watch the fights for free this weekend, sign up to the ESPN Plus 7-day free trial using the link in the description below. I appreciate your support, and I'll catch you guys next time.